Welcome to the Thresholds of Reality, the podcast where we explore unexplained and mysterious events, phenomena, and legends. Today we are looking at some real-life cursed objects. These are objects that have left a trail of death and destruction in their wake. Strap in as we explore the edges of the unknown. What is up, Kyle? Man, I feel like it has been forever since we have seen each other and done a podcast.
I know. It's not from slacking either, though.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like we had something scheduled on Tuesday. Unfortunately, fell through because we had some work interruptions. You know, it's a shame that we cannot do Thresholds of Reality full time yet.
Right.
We are working on it. And so sometimes our real life creeps in and messes up the schedule. But thankfully we are able to get together today and look at this fascinating topic of real life cursed objects. In your opinion, what is required to qualify something as a cursed object?
I think first it has to have the allure of something behind it. It's got to have that. It's got to be that kind of thing where you walk up to it and you know right off the bat there's something wrong with that object. Before you even know anything about it, just you know that there's not something right about it. I think that's like the first requirement is that it's got to give you that creep factor.
A chill down your spine.
Like you just know like that should not be in my house, or that should not be in my place. We should not have that anywhere near us before you even dig in to try to figure out what it is.
Yeah. I feel like what makes something a cursed object would be that, I mean, an actual curse could be anything, right? Some kind of warning or spell attached to an object. We have some things on our list today that look like that. But at other times, it's just a series of events, tragic events that follow wherever this object goes. And I think the first item I wanted to cover is one that I talked about. So I had a road trip, and this was one of the items that we talked about. And it's kind of the genesis for this whole topic, and that is the demon core. You ever heard of the demon core?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so you recall that at the end of World War II, the United States dropped 2 nuclear weapons on Japan.
Yep.
Well, they actually created a third, and on August 13th, 1945, the core of this third weapon was molded. It was a plutonium core, and it was sent to the military, to another military installation, to be put into a bomb that was set to be dropped on August 16th, depending on how the Japanese reacted to the first 2 bombs. And then we all know that they surrendered on August 15th. So 2 days after this core was minted, the Japanese surrendered. So it was never launched. But rather than melt it down and destroy the core, it was sent to some military scientists for further study. And one of the things that they were trying to study or try to understand was this idea of critical mass, which is the point at which a nuclear bomb or a nuclear metal, radioactive metal becomes highly energetic. Well, one of the scientists, I think his name was Matt Daglian, he had created this experiment using tungsten carbide bricks. and this is the device that he had put together right here that you see on the screen right now. The demon core is that metal sphere in the middle, and it weighs about 6 kilograms, and it's just a 2 or 3 inches in diameter. It's not very big, but it weighed a lot. And he would stack these bricks around the sphere, and when he got so many bricks stacked around it, it would reflect enough of the neutron radiation back into the sphere that it would start to go supercritical, which means that it would glow, put off a lot of energy. That kind of fission reaction would start to self-sustain.
You would put bricks around it?
What's that?
You put bricks?
Yeah, they're bricks. So if you can look at this photo, you can see the bricks. They're made of a metal called tungsten carbide. And the reason why you use that metal is because it was reflective of the neutron radiation coming off of the sphere.
So like in the way of like a mirror, it would bounce, like reflect?
Like a mirror, but it was only for the neutron radiation coming out of it. So it was these highly energetic radioactive particles are pushing out from the sphere, and then they're getting redirected back into the sphere by these bricks. Stuff. What's that?
That sounds like some alien stuff.
It is kind of weird. It is
alien
weird.
Technology type of things. Like,
well, on August 21st, 1945. So this is just a little over a week after this core was minted, and just a few days after Japan decided they didn't want anything to do with these bombs anymore and surrendered. The science, Daglian, was doing this experiment, and he accidentally dropped one too many bricks onto the sphere and accidentally pushed it into supercriticality. And it started to glow, this like bright blue glow, and it emitted this wave of heat, and he realized how dangerous it had become.
What do you mean by drop?
He was manually taking these bricks and placing them because they didn't have any safety protocols. This is all brand new science at the time.
Yeah.
And so he's manually putting these bricks around, and he kind of fumbles one, and it hit the sphere and then landed in place. And he was supposed to do it very slowly, but it slipped because these things are very heavy. They're very heavy. And it dropped into place, and it starts to go supercritical, glowing, emitting light and heat. And he reached across and he knocked the brick away to stop the reaction from continuing. But in that brief moment, when it was starting to glow, he received a lethal dose of radiation. He received, I think they measured 200 rads of radiation, and I think the lethal dose is something like 12 or 15. There was one other guy in the room, a janitor or a security guard, and he was just chilling, reading the newspaper, and he was across the room, and he received 8 rads of radiation, which he lived the rest of a natural life, but he died of leukemia at the age of 62 which was caused by the radiation he had received in this particular moment. So Professor Daglian, after he knocks the brick off, he goes to the hospital, and he ends up dying 25 days later from acute radiation poisoning.
Wow.
Well, there's another guy who continues the work, and he comes up with a different experiment using spheres, using these kind of spherical beryllium shields to reflect the neutron radiation back in on itself. And let me pull up the guy's name. I think it was Stolian or Slotin, Dr. Slotin. And with this particular arrangement, they're lowering a top sphere onto a bottom sphere or hemisphere, And to keep it from going supercritical, all he had, you see there on his right hand, he's got a flathead screwdriver that he's using to keep it from going supercritical. He would turn the flathead screwdriver on its side, and then lower that shield on top of the sphere. And that was the only thing stopping it from going supercritical. And he liked to kind of be a cowboy, and he would show up without any protective gear, just there in his jeans and his cardigan. And he was very cavalier. And a famous scientist, Enrico Fermi from Italy, he said, if you guys don't do this any better, you'll all be dead within a year. The way you're running these experiments, you'll all be dead within a year. And it's kind of ironic that we're covering this given the nature of cavalier science these days. I feel like that's something that has caused a lot of problems, is scientists not taking enough care.
Yeah, you think they're being a little too hasty with no safety protocols.
Yeah, they didn't have any safety protocols. There was another scientist who called their experiment playing with the tail of a sleeping dragon. And so they dubbed this type of supercriticality experiment teasing the tail of the dragon, or playing with the tail of the dragon. And exactly 9 months later, in May of 1946, May 21st, 1946, Dr. Slotin slips with the screwdriver, and the cap of that shield falls into place, causing that sphere to go radioactive, or to go supercritical, and starts to glow blue. And this time it wasn't just him and one other person. There were now 7 people in the room. 7 people in the room when this thing's going supercritical. And he manages to flip the cap off of that demon core, and it falls to the ground, and the reaction calms down. Well, as soon as it started to glow, everyone cleared out of the room except for him. And he called everybody back in to mark, and used a chalk to mark where they had been standing so he could measure how much radiation they had received as a result of the cap falling down. And he looked around the room, and it looked like everybody else was safe enough distance away, and that he had received most of the dose himself. And he said, well, that's that. That was like his last words. Well, that's that. And you remember the first guy received 200 rads, which was like 20 times the lethal dose. Dr. Slotin, or Professor Slotin, received 1,000 rads, 5 times higher of a dose. He didn't last a week. He died within a week. And his hand was so destroyed. It looked like they had like a blister the size of his entire palm had formed from the burns. But luckily, none of the other people in the room died. And so twice, basically the same exact way, these 2 scientists were killed by a reckless experiment gone predictably wrong. So what happened to the demon core? Well, it was scheduled to be detonated in the Bikini Atoll during the U.S.'s nuclear weapons tests in the 40s. In fact, it was scheduled to be detonated like the next week after or before this incident went down. But it didn't end up going out there. In fact, what happened to it was it spent some time in kind of a cool down phase, because after the supercriticality experiments, it got really excited and active, and it was too radioactive to put into a bomb. And so they had to let it cool. And then eventually it was melted down and became part of the U.S. nuclear arsenal, and as it was like split up into other parts. But absolutely insane, absolutely destructive. What's that?
I would have been scared to melt it down.
Well, yeah, it's very scary. These are highly radioactive minerals, and Yeah, they had to be very careful doing that.
Man, you think
Yeah.
the second guy would have learned from the first guy?
You would think, and he was in the hospital with the first guy when the first guy died. And he was there to comfort him, and he said, "Don't worry, we'll keep experimenting." And the first guy was just like, "Whatever, I'm dead." It's like, like I can't.
We put a vest on when we get our teeth X-rayed.
Yeah, now we do. You bet.
Like I don't know. You would have thought, okay, like they know it was radioactive. They knew what it was going to do. They know what it's capable of. You think one person would have said, maybe we should do, I don't know, put on a leather apron. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like something
Right.
like you look at these pictures and it's bare hand.
That's all bare hand.
Like the guy bare hand with looked like what he had, maybe like a 10-inch screwdriver.
It's just a regular screwdriver, flathead screwdriver.
Yeah,
Turned on its side.
Like you would think as what they're dealing with and the complexity of what they're dealing with, and that's their job. You just think, we know what this is capable of. We've been experimenting. We just dropped a couple, we've seen the destruction of it. What can we, I don't know, like maybe we should call OSHA. I don't know.
OSHA hadn't even been invented yet. That wasn't even a thing.
Like there had been something like, okay, there's gotta, I don't know. It's like, you would just think, for as rational and as scientists would be, you would think, okay, I know, what can I don't know if they're just too excited to mess with this, or they thought they were above it, or I don't know.
Yeah, I would say that is kind of the nature of science, or some scientists, is that we think about the notion of a mad scientist as someone who's so thirsty for the pursuit of knowledge that he doesn't care what the consequences are.
Like walk before you run.
And there has to be some sort of ethics to the science. It's like, does this pursuit of knowledge actually cause more harm than good? And if that's the case, then we should not be pursuing it. And then you've got the mad scientist types who are like, it doesn't matter. The pursuit of knowledge is an end in and of itself, and we're going to go after it regardless of whatever dangers it causes. But fortunately, it seems like the only two casualties, or immediate casualties, were the scientists conducting the experiments themselves. So, that's I think the Demon Core radiation and radioactive minerals in particular were pretty dangerous stuff. And I don't know that it's necessarily a curse, but it seems like the people conducting experiments on such a dangerous object were certainly cursed. And Marie Curie, who basically discovered the radiation, she had so much radiation in her body. If you go to a museum where her little wood rocking chair was, or her wood chair that she was working in, if you run a Geiger counter on that chair, it's still radioactive to this day.
She's in like a lead coffin as it is, because she's still so radioactive.
Yeah, right? She absorbed so many radioactive particles that she's radioactive, and it'll probably be thousands of years before she stops being radioactive.
That's crazy. No, I don't know. I guess so. I'm just gonna go for it. I'm just gonna go for it. I don't need to be safe. I got a pretty steady head. Oops.
Yeah, I mean, talking of mad scientists, I think you wanted to cover a mad scientist too, or a mad doctor, really, right?
I did. This is more. Let me bring it up. This is more of a murder babilia than it is like a possessed something. So what I wanted to bring up was I'll bring it up here, is Jack Kevorkian's 1968 Volkswagen bus.
Jack Kevorkian, he's the Dr. Death.
Yes. So if anybody grew up in the 90s at a reasonable age, this guy was a very hot topic. and he was kind of the one that really pushed assisted suicide. And that's why they get, he did, it was like 133 people that I think he assisted with. So that's how they deemed him Dr. Death. So what they did was, what's up, Aaron? They, so what he would do is, that's what he drove was a VW bus, and he would drive to pick his, he would pick because, a lot of the people that he assisted suicide were critically ill. They were on the last leg of their life for whatever reason it was. Like one of his clients actually died in the bus as they were driving to go to perform the assisted suicide. So they what happened was, it was put in a it was actually at a pawn shop in 8 Mile.
His VW? Did you already put it up?
Yeah. Which, I mean, if it didn't have such a allure to it, I would love to own that and restore it. You know what I mean? But it was so the pawn shop owner had it. He had it. The guy wanted $100,000 for it, and the dude from Zach Baggins, he actually bought it for $40,000 to put in his museum.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but I mean, I just think that's a cool, that's just a cool object of anywhere I can wedge in a Volkswagen to talk about.
I can't imagine that VW bus not having ghosts or spirits haunting it, but I mean,
any of them travel across
how many people did he assist in suicide?
133.
Yeah, hundreds of people.
Yeah,
and
about 133 people.
But I mean, the question is, did they die? They must have died peacefully, right? It was at their own request.
Yeah, it was on their request. Yeah, he helped them. I mean, he didn't put a gun to their head. It was, it was medicine, it was drugs that he gave them to go. But how cool would that be to have, just like the lead singer of Korn, Jonathan Davis, he owned Ted Bundy's Bug.
Really?
His original Volkswagen Bug that he had used to. But that is now in Vegas in Zach Baggins' personal haunted museum.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
And another thing that, like I was telling you before the show, is Kevorkian was actually a really good musician, a jazz musician. He actually put a CD out. So if you could actually find those CDs out in the wild, it's kind of a cool collectible, knowing that, Dr. Death put out this. I assume it's probably something he played, because it's like this soothing jazz.
Duke Silver.
Like elevator jazz, you know what I mean? It's like, but I just thought that was pretty cool. That's
wild, dude.
That's a goal of my life, is to actually own some kind of murder memorabilia.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of collectors of that stuff. So you'd be up against some big names in that industry. One of the things that has been collected that I'm aware of is this rocking chair that a murderer named Thomas Busby had cursed. He put an actual curse on it as he was getting ready to get hung from the gallows and then put on display. He says, "Hey, just buy Ted Bundy's house."
Done.
As he was getting ready to go to the gallows, he went to his favorite pub as kind of like a last meal. And then on the way there, he says, as he gets up out of the chair, he says, let anybody, Toom, you got to tell us about that one. He says he's owned a cursed item for sure, and it's in the river now. Wow. I'll have to tell us more about that. Um, he cursed his chair, said, "Let anybody who sits in this chair die immediately." And here's a picture of a chair that people believe is the one that was cursed, but turns out this chair cannot be the cursed chair that he cursed, but it does behave as though it's a cursed chair because everybody who sat in that chair died. For example, during
died because it was uncomfortable. No, I'm just playing.
Yeah, their back just immediately goes out of place. During World War II, people who would sit in it and then go out on bombing raids. The pub itself was near the Royal Air Force base, and people who would go on bombing raids who sat in that chair would not come back. They would die on their bombing raids. And then later on, there were folks who climbed in that chair who would mysteriously die. And one of them was a carpenter. These two carpenters were having some fun with the chair, and one of them climbed in the chair, and then the other one said, "Oh, you probably should not do that." And then as they were roofing, the roof collapsed, and the one that sat in the chair died in the roof collapse. And
that would suck.
yeah.
Suck.
So it's just like very, very scary stuff. Like anybody who sat in that chair would somehow mysteriously die. There was a woman who was cleaning for maintenance and accidentally stumbled and fell into the chair. And then she died of cancer like 2 months later. It was almost immediate. She got cancer and then she died. Hey, Patrick, thanks for tuning in.
I always think that, like, I think Toom and Aaron and Patrick can all agree. We all, to those who are listening that don't listen to our other stuff, is we, and Sam as well, we buy collectibles.
Yeah.
Comics, cards. Sam gets anime. And a lot of it's by collections of comics and cards and whatever. And you don't know where you're getting them from. You're just buying them from somebody, and you don't know where they bought them from. I mean, I wonder how many like people can have like an item or like an experience after they bought like something like that, because comics, collectibles, stuff like that, people get attached to them.
Yeah.
Like I talked on the other show last night that I'm going to sell off a lot of my books to buy another Volkswagen to fix up, and I'd be selling them, but like I wonder like buying these, how many, like, and I'm attached to them, like it's going to be very hard for me to be able to sell them. And I just wondered, like, and I kind of tried to look and I didn't find any real stories of collectibles.
Well, it's funny you say that, because a lot of these items, they wind up in museums. Like this chair, the Busby stoop chair, they eventually hung it up on the seat on this wall. It's 5 feet above the ground so that people can't sit on it. But it's in a museum collection in England, in the UK. But yeah, they had to raise it up off the ground because they were tired of people like actually falling into it and dying. Krusk is King says, how do you know if an object you own is actually cursed? Well, that's a great question. That's what we're trying to figure out.
What I was researching is you find out the hard way. By
yeah,
like for real, it always ends up being the hard way, as in stuff starts to happen, just like we were talking about. You were talking about that rocking chair, or that chair. Like I have a rocking chair one that I'm going to tell next. But I think you find out the hard way that once you have the object and that's when you start seeing this activity. People start dying in the chair. Like incidents start to happen. Things start to come about. So I think it sucks. Like I guess, like, you can go on eBay and it says, like I tried to bid on a ghost in a jar one time. So I guess going into it, I knew that, there was a ghost in this jar, like, but I guess, like, so speaking of that, the Devil's Rocking Chair. And let me bring a picture of that real quick.
Here, I got it.
I got it right here. So what this is
A very handsome man.
oh yeah,
Next
dude,
to a rocking chair.
it's fucking Zach, dude. Zach Baggins. But so what this is it's a rocking chair. What happens is a demon came to this man and started coming to him at night while he was sleeping. And it said he was a man with black eyes, thin face, animal features, jagged teeth, pointed ears, horns, and hooves. And it would just come to him at night. And eventually it started to come to him during the day. And he started seeing it all the time. And it was one of those things where he was getting scratches and bruises and hurt from this thing. And this is one of the cases that actually the Warrens had come in to help with.
Yeah, the Warrens are. If you're not familiar, that's the oh, what's that? What's that movie series?
Yeah, so it's Ed and Lorraine Warren.
They have the movie series. Is it Insidious? Is that what it is?
So they did, yeah, the Annabelle stuff's based on them.
The Hauntings.
Yeah,
That's what.
yes.
Yeah, The Hauntings.
So what happened was so as the Warrens and priests and everybody were coming to they were doing exorcism after exorcism on him. And that was the rocking chair that he was actually sitting in. And prior to that rocking chair they would actually see it rocking by itself with nobody there. And Lorraine Warren actually saw that she saw that creature sitting in that chair. So when they would go and they performed multiple exorcisms on this man. And to this day, you could still see the stains of the holy water on the chair.
No way, dude. That's crazy.
Yeah. So they did, and what actually ended up happening is it actually left when they performed the exit. It actually left him and went to another family member. That demon. So the demon didn't actually completely like go away, like like how it's mostly portrayed. Once the exorcism is done, that thing is gone forever. And what ended up happening with it was he would go the guy would go into a trance from time to time, and he had like a 5-inch pocket knife, and I think he stabbed his landlord, and it was just so it's
Yes.
And then like he actually pleaded not guilty due to demonic possession.
Really? So did he convince the jury that he was possessed by a demon?
No, he received a 10 to 20 year sentence for first degree manslaughter.
Yeah.
So, and then and that chair used to be in Zach Baggins, also in his Haunted Museum, but there were so many things that were happening with that chair. He actually removed it from the public so that they can't see that chair when they would go to his museum.
It's too much of a channel.
He actually purchased a chair from the Warrens.
Too much of a channel.
Yeah, people were seeing things, and there was incidents happening with the chair after he actually had it.
Well, since we're already talking about the Warrens, you want to roll right into the next one?
Yeah, I could do that. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is the Annabelle doll, which in the movies you got to remember it was like a porcelain doll. But
in real life, it's a real life doll, right? The movie's based on a real life doll.
It was actually a Raggedy Ann doll, yes. So what this was is actually she was a nursing student and a nurse, and her mom gave her this doll. And they got this creepy feeling from it. They noticed that it changed positions, that it moved around. And so what they did was they took it to a like a psychic medium. And what the medium actually told them was that it was possessed by a little girl. So in the beginning, they were under the assumption that that it was just a little girl. But once the Warrens got involved, that's when they realized that it was actually a demonic spirit that was possessing it. And it would, like, they would get rid of it. It would come back. It would write with crayon. It would, like, this was actually like it
moved around, right? It moved around a lot.
It moved around. They got rid of it. It would come back. It would, it would be like, when the girls would bring like their boyfriends over, or male company over, like it would creep them out because it would end up in weird spots just staring at the boyfriends and so forth. And it's kind of cool. The Ed and Lorraine did a audiobook where they actually talk about this whole entire event. It from their book. I listened to the audio version of it, but it was a very terrifying one for them.
So in the research, it looked like they initially thought it was possessed by a ghost.
A medium told them it was a little girl that was possessing the doll. And
then eventually they came to understand that it wasn't a little girl ghost, that it was a demon.
Yep.
And the demon was using the doll as like a conduit to hell.
Oh, that's a cool name for a band.
Conduit to hell.
Conduit to hell.
Conduits to hell.
There you go.
We almost named our podcast Conduits to
Hell. and like listening, like if that's what's cool is when I was listening to their audiobook, listening to them talk about these experiences, man, it's truly like it gives you goosebumps as you're listening to this, because I couldn't imagine going through this. There you go. Thanks, Aaron. So it was they actually said that actually, according to this article that I'm reading, that it was locked in, like if you saw the picture, it says, but that it was even responsible for harming and even killing one visitor that went to the Warrens Museum in Connecticut.
Oh, wow.
So,
yeah. So nowadays they keep it locked up, and there's a video that the Warrens' son put out about cleaning the doll, and Ed Warren left specific instructions that when you clean the doll, you are not to touch it with your skin. You have to put on gloves. Mm-hmm. You have to put on plastic covering so that the doll itself cannot make physical contact with you.
But but it's okay to mess with radioactive materials with your bare hands.
Yeah,
just not the possessed doll.
Yeah. Well, I think the next object is either cursed by a spirit or a radioactive material, and that is the Bassano Vase. And this is the only known photo of this object. The Bassano Vase was a 15th century vase cast in silver, and it was meant to be a wedding gift to an Italian woman, and prior to her wedding. When she received the vase, though, something strange happened to her. She became obsessed with the object, and then woke up right the morning of her wedding dead. Everyone found her dead, gripping the vase in her hands. The object itself was not initially believed to be cursed. It was passed from one family member to another, and everybody who owned it, who possessed it, ended up dead.
How many people did it go through before they were like, okay?
Well, the first time around, it went through the woman who was going to be married, and then 3 more. So a total of 4 the first time around. and then it was buried and locked away in like a family basement in Italy. And there was kind of a lore legend built around it, and every so often someone would find it and unearth it, and then it would kill again. Well, it eventually somebody took it out of the family archives and sold it. There was a note attached to it, and it said, "Warning: this item causes death. This item causes death."
Don't most things we buy today say that from a California warning?
Yeah. This object is known by the state of California to cause cancer. The person who unearthed it disregarded the note and took it to auction where it was sold. And it was sold to like a doctor. And he had it in his possession for 3 months. And then he died mysteriously. And then someone else bought it. And they died after 2 months. And then the family of that doctor, or the second owner, sold it to another person who died after 2 months. And then the family of the third victim, they realized that it was cursed. And so they were not going to sell it to anybody. Instead, what they did was they pitched it out the window, and it hit a police officer in the head. And he came back to them, and he says, here's your vase plus a ticket for public recklessness. And they said, "We'll take the ticket, but you can keep the vase. We don't want the vase." And the police officers said, "Well, what am I supposed to do with it?" And they said, "We don't care, but we don't want it." And so he took it to the police station, and they had it in like an evidence locker for a long time. And they decided, well, we should like give it to a museum or something. And they tried to give it to a museum, and the museum had already known about it. They said, we know about this vase. The family tried to get rid of it, and we don't want it. And so eventually it was just buried, and nobody knows where it is anymore. But I'm guessing. Go ahead.
I was like, at least in evidence, there was no reported cases or stories of anything happening while it was in evidence, which means, because I mean, there's evidence technicians that come in and out that, like, so I guess it has to be like, is it like a physically owned thing? Because, the officer didn't die and he took possession of it.
Here's what I think, Kyle. And I think it's related to our Demon Core story at the beginning, which is I think there's some low level radiation. Patrick says vase. It's pronounced vase. Vase. No, I call it a vase. A
vase.
But it's made of metal, right? It's a silver metal. So it's possible that there's a low level radiation coming from this vase. And remember, it took just a second of supercritical exposure to kill those two scientists, right? But what if you were exposed to low-level radiation over a series of months? 3 months, 2 months, depending on how close to where you ate it was, or where you slept. Perhaps the curse in the case of the Bassano Vase is radiation poisoning. Yeah. Aaron says he got hit in the head with a vase and it didn't get injured. Well, it's not very big. It's not a very big thing. I mean, I honestly don't know how big it is, but silver is not that dense of a metal. I shouldn't say it's not that hard of a metal. So I don't know. I don't know the exact details of, and maybe he was wearing a helmet at the time, I don't know. But he was more just kind of
down the road.
If I
was the cop, I would have given him way more than a ticket.
It's like, hey, folks, what's going on?
I'm mad.
Yeah. So the Bassano vase, nobody knows where it is. It's never been tested for radioactive materials, but I think that's probably the likely culprit of that particular curse. Is somebody had found some sort of radioactive isotope that they had cast into this vase, and it was killing people with radiation. That's my thinking. All the mysterious deaths It just seemed like poisoning.
Officer down, officer down.
Officer down. This guy hit in the head with a nuclear vase. Well, you had one that was a vase too, right? Or something along those lines.
No, my last one was the Dybook box.
Yeah. Let's go over that.
So
What's a Dybook?
that is I think it's a Jewish folklore of an evil
Evil spirit, evil demon, or something?
Mm-hmm. It's an evil, restless spirit that possesses the living inside it.
So it's like a poltergeist.
Yeah. So the story behind this is it's an old wine cabinet that a Holocaust survivor named Havelia, she escaped occupied Poland, and she actually took it to Spain with her and then actually immigrated to the United States with it. And that was one of the few things she actually brought with her. And they ended up selling it, and a man in his mid-30s bought it, took it back to his shop, because what he was going to do, he's going to restore it and bring it back to give to his mother. And so he said, well, according to this article, says he found a series of strange objects inside. Two U.S. wheat pennies from 1925 and 1988, 2 locks of hair, a dried rosebud, a 4-legged candlestick, a golden wine cup, and a granite sculpture inside with the Hebrew word of shalom.
Shalom? Like hello?
Yeah. And then there was and then don't give me wrong, forget this, but the Shema prayer was carved onto the back of the cabinet.
Wow.
And then over the course of a couple years, it was kind of like back what I was saying in the beginning, like the sister was creeped out by the cabinet because there was just something creepy about it. But what she had noticed was that the doors would open on their own. There was complaints of like a urine smell coming out of it. Something between like cat urine, and like jasmine.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it looked like the siblings actually suffered from nightmares of an old woman with sunken eyes after this box was in their house. And the brother, by this article, the brother of a store employee died by suicide after visiting the shop and knocking a cabinet off of the shelf. And then a couple years later, the worker actually took his own life. And then the dude says, well, okay, this is messing up with my family. I'm going to give it to my girlfriend.
He wasn't ready to commit.
No, it's not good enough that my family got all creeped out about it. I'm going to go ahead and give it to my girlfriend. Well, she saw shadow figures and everything around it. So she said, I don't want this thing. You can have it back. So then he ended up, so she gave it back. And then
eventually he calls a rabbi, right?
He asked to put it on eBay.
No, he calls a rabbi to seal the Dybook into the box again, right? He had to seal it back up.
So yeah, but he ended up putting it on eBay, and it says because of all the strange things that happened to him, he wanted to get rid of it. And towards the end of the description, he writes, "Help me,
help me,
help me. Take this haunted box. Help me."
So where is it now? Do you know where it is?
It's in a museum now.
Yeah,
so right now
it's a very nice display.
Yeah,
You've got,
it's a museum all. I mean, it's a nice looking cabinet.
it is a nice looking cabinet, and they've got it in a really nice display case. But look, they've got salt all around the base of the cabinet,
They must have watched Supernatural.
or Supernatural's watching them.
Mm-hmm. So, I just thought that's a crazy. That's just crazy to me.
Well, Tim, if you're still watching, I sent you a link to the stream, so I wanted to hear your story about the cursed object that you tossed into the river.
Wish we could get that dude to come on a podcast.
But
I would love. I mean, there's a few of you in the chat besides Tim who's already said that. But has anybody else like had any kind of encounter like this? Because like, even though I have weird, crazy stories that you can hear on other podcasts, like the craziest thing that's ever happened to me was I knew this girl. We used to hang out. We weren't like boyfriend and girlfriend. We were just friends and hanging out. And one time she gave me this vial, and it was some kind of spell that she was trying to put on me. And it had all this weird stuff in it. And right around the same time was like, everybody gets curious about Ouija boards and stuff. And I was too broke to actually like buy one. So, we'd make out of cardboard. I had actually like messed with it. This is stupid. I don't care about this. Is dumb stuff. Walked it across the street, threw it in the dumpster. Just a piece of cardboard with some writing on it. Show up the next day, sitting at my front door. Had to throw it away a couple times.
you're
I never
kidding.
had to like rip it up and throw it away.
You finally tore it up and threw it away.
Yeah. But it
Did it
showed
come
back
back
up on
after
my
that?
door more than once.
Wild.
Like, I don't know if somebody was getting it out of the garbage and bringing it back as a joke. But like, yeah, like I'd walk it across the street because like across the street from my parents' house is an alley with some dumpsters. I'd just toss it in the dumpster and bring it back and then come back. And the next day it would show up on my doorstep. It'd be at my front door.
I had some relationships that were like that.
Yeah, right.
But
yeah,
never with an object.
Yeah, I can't remember the actual spell that the girl had. It was some kind of, and she had made it into a necklace that she wanted me to wear. But I know it like had like blood in it, and like some of her blood was in it, all these different things. I can't remember what the spell was for, and that was like, all right, I think we have found our end to our friendship. Now that they're giving me like weird spell vials, this is just a little bit too weird for me, and I'm not gonna.
Did you consult with your ghost friend on that one? And he's like, "Yeah, she's crazy."
No, I didn't need to consult with any ghost friends to figure out she's crazy.
Yeah, but I just feel like your idea of crazy seems so natural given the amount of crazy that you've experienced in your own life. It's like you have a ghost that has followed you since childhood, and yet this girl who hands you a charm, a trinket, you're like, yeah, that's too much commitment. I'm not really into that right now.
We can't be friends anymore. That's my creep out moment. Yes.
so I'm just saying, given the experiences that you've shared, your amount of weird outedness is surprisingly normal. Like that's how I would react. And I've never had any ghosts or weird experiences in my life at all. And I'd be like, yeah, I don't need your blood. Like that's not something I'm really interested in.
Because it was this little vial and it had like, just like a cork plugged in it. And then she had like wrapped it around. So it was like a necklace, like a hemp necklace with it and stuff. And I was like, yeah. She's like, you got to wear it. I'm cool.
Adios.
See you later.
You're like, hey, but have you ever heard of this weird rocking chair? Maybe you ought to go sit in it.
Right. Here's a doll that you can clean. Don't put gloves on.
Man. Well, unless we're going to go going once, going twice on Tomb. Really was hoping he'd come on, but that's okay. We'll get him another time.
Yeah.
So what do you think, Kyle? Do you think cursed objects are real?
If you believe in, I mean, if the experiences are there and it's happening and you get rid of it and the experiences stop, yes, I have to believe that there's that. Just like I was saying with the comic books and stuff, and with stuff, things get attached. I think it's just part of it. It's just like when a lot of people remodel their house, and that's when they start seeing like paranormal activity. It's because you're disrupting what this spirit is attached to. So it has to come with the territory.
Yeah,
And just like the demonic things, it's there has to be conduits if you're gonna, there's got to be a way for them to get from somewhere. So
yeah, I feel like the radioactive items are kind of like an analogy that they're giving off some sort of energy, right? Cursed objects are imbued with some sort of energy that they're giving off over time, and that's what's causing all of this harm. But how do they get that energy in the first place? That's the real question.
Well, a lot of stuff that was made a long time ago, they didn't really put a lot of thought. Same thing with the scientists. There's no safety protocols.
Tom, I sent you a link. Do you want to jump on and talk about your? Do you want to jump on and talk about your cursed item?
So and I think a lot of that goes back to a lot of those old items that are made. It could be that's what it is stuff that they used to make it was, same thing with the metals and paints and so forth that they used a long time ago.
Lead, mercury, yeah,
asbestos, whatever.
Oh, come on, Tim.
He hasn't built up the courage yet. It's all good. He will.
Anyway, yeah, I think, but what I'm saying is, okay, all right, we'll hold you to it, Tim. Looking forward to hearing about your cursed object. What I'm saying is not just that items are poisoned or radioactive. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying as an example, there's like a psychic energy or a demonic energy that's imbued into these items beyond radioactivity. But the question is, how does it get that energy? Like, how does the Annabelle doll become a conduit to hell? How does it get there? And I don't know the answer to that.
Who knows? Like, why, out of all the things you can pick, why would you pick a Raggedy Ann doll? Why would you pick a cabinet? Why, you know what I mean?
Why a rocking chair? Why those things? What do they have that another object doesn't have? Like, why, like this weird pear thing I have on my bookshelf. Why not that? What does it have? What are those items? Or, your curtains. Like, what makes something a conduit to hell that other things don't?
I can't wait to listen to Aaron's new album, Conduits
to Hell. Yeah, we're looking forward to it. Yee. Anyway, appreciate you guys tuning in and sharing so much of the chat. You guys are rock. Love it.
So if anybody's got any theories on that, I would love to hear from our listeners. Anybody listening, like what they think, what they've encountered, any insight. And I would love to do a follow-up episode on.
Yeah, I think this would probably be a series of explorations. There's lots of items out there. I mean, we just covered like 8 different items today, but I know that there's a lot more cursed items out there. And if anybody has a cursed object that they want to discuss or they feel comfortable discussing, let us know. And
love it.
We would love to feature you and your item on the program. But until then, thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate every one of you listening. Patrick, Tomb, Yee, Krusk, thank you guys for for being in the chat and sharing so much with us. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. If you feel like sharing, we would really appreciate it. Hopefully our content is good enough that you feel like you could share it. Yeah, he says he's not allowed to show his monkey's paw on camera. And hey, rules are rules. You got to keep that monkey paw secret. But until next time, we hope you continue exploring the edges of the unknown.